remember when I was first starting out in my relationship with God, my main goal was simply to be successful and to be a better person. I wanted to be liked by everybody. I wanted to be known by the world, and that was all I cared about. And so in trying to do that, I looked into the Bible and tried to achieve God. God was a goal of mine. I wanted to know God, and I wanted to know God by doing things in the same way that, in business, you hustle and hustle and hustle and work and work and work until you get something. That's what I wanted to do with God. That was my plan. And the success that I wanted to gain in the world, I wanted to use God as a vehicle to be able to do that. And yet, after 3 years of doing that, after 3 years of pursuing God, the craziest thing that's happened to me is I've run the race of trying to earn God for 3 years. Run the race of trying to earn God. Run the race of trying to earn that success. And I've gotten to the point where I've been burnt out on top of burnt out on top of burnt out. It's like there's just burnout after burnout after burnout after burnout. And I've always said, God, what are you doing? And I've always felt like he just looked back up at me like no words, no nothing, just. And I always used to just think that was a little rude. But in all honesty, I think that was the best thing he could do. Because my efforts were not amusing him. My diligence in trying to earn him wasn't impressing him. My plans that I was trying to use him to make successful, he didn't want to be a part of. And it got to the place where I said, God, what are you doing? And I read this story in the Bible. I believe it's Mark chapter 6, verse 37 to 42. And it talks about Jesus feeding the 5,000. And the craziest part of this story is that the disciples came back from a long trip of going from house to house with no secure food, no secure money, no secure anything, just sent out in pairs of two. Dang, what the heck with that lighting? They were just sent out. They were just sent out in pairs of two to go out and proclaim the gospel and tell people to repent. They come back from a real long trip. Jesus says, go to a place where there's just nothing and no one and just rest. And as they're about to go rest, 5,000 people come and they're expecting something from Jesus. They're expecting something from the disciples. And so Jesus has compassion on those people. You got to think there's 12 disciples who are tired and hungry and just came back from a long trip of doing everything that Jesus is about to do. And 5,000 people flock to them and are looking for healing, are looking for a word, are looking for a teaching. And Jesus has compassion on them, so much so that he actually does teach them. And after he teaches them, the disciples say, okay, we need something to eat. Tell them to go home. Jesus says, you feed them. And the disciples go, how are we supposed to feed them with 200 denarii? They actually made a sarcastic remark. They're like, yeah, we're going to feed 5,000 people with 200 denarii worth of bread. And then Jesus goes to them and says, how much bread do you have? And they say 5 loaves and 2 fish. And Jesus takes the 5 loaves and takes the 2 fish, blesses them, says thanks to God, and gets enough bread and fish to feed 5,000 people and have 12 baskets full left over. This is the craziest story of all time to me, because Jesus always goes to the disciples. He always goes to the unbelieving person and says, do it. He says, how are we going to come up with this? He says, what do you think? And there's always 2 potential outcomes. And I believe when Jesus does this in our lives, there's 2 potential outcomes. We can act like we got it, or we can simply say, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. A lot of times, just like me, I see my friends, I see people in church, I see people online that are trying, just like I was, and sometimes still am. People that are trying to do what God has told them to do without God. There's so many people that are so lost and so burnt out and so stressed because they're trying to do the things that God has asked them to do without God. And the Bible literally says, Jesus himself says, with man, these things are impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Meaning without God, there's no way. And with God, it's the only way. So to encourage those people out there that feel stressed out to the max, that feel like they're running the race and getting nowhere, that feel like God has just gone completely silent on them, I just want to encourage you and tell you he's waiting for you to drop the act. He's waiting for you to put down the plans. He's waiting for you to put down the weapons for just a second and say, God, I can't do it. It's so funny to me. This kind of just came to me now. I went to go to the gym with one of my boys from the shop, Cam. Shout out Cam. And we've been talking about going to the gym for a bit. And I was like, bro, Cam, I could work out. He was like, bro, no, you're not going to hold down the fort on my workout. It's just not going to happen. And I'm like, bro, I could do it. So we go and we get into pull-ups. Pull-ups were good. We go into rows. Rows seem to be all right. And then we up the weight on the rows. Now this is for him, not me. He ups his weight and he goes, bangs out his set. He's done. I go to do the set. He's like, you got that? And I was like, yeah, I got it. I go to do the set. I start pumping. I do a set, put it down, do another set. And he goes, bro, you don't have to go crazy like that. And I was like, yeah, facts, because I cannot do that set. And there's this thing in lifting that's called ego lifting. It's when you're doing way too much. You're doing way more than you even know you can handle. And I feel like it's crazy because the one thing that people like me want from ego lifting is respect. But you actually get more respect when you just drop the weight and do what you can handle. You see, this is just like our relationship with God. We can go on and say, no, God, I can do this. You know what, God, I'm going to do this for you. You know what, God, I'm going to prove to you. And we can sit around all day looking to prove ourselves to God. But I need you to understand, because I needed to understand this myself, and I still need to understand it myself. God doesn't expect you to be able to do it. God has been around for every single human being to live. God has been around for every single human being that has ever lived. None of them have been able to do it. He's been close to them. He's been near to them. He's seen every single person on this earth live their life. And he knows for a fact that they can't do it. So do you think that when he sees you struggling to do it, he expects you to be able to make up weight and do it? This might be freeing for some of you. It's impossible. You can't do it. The 10 Commandments, you couldn't keep one of them even if you tried. The written word in the Bible, you can't have enough faith. Okay? You can't be content. You can't not lust. You can't do those things on your own strength. Those things are possible, right? You can get away from lust. You can stop the drug addiction. You can stop the drinking. You can stop the going out with people you know you shouldn't go out with. But those aren't things for you to do. Those are things for God to work in you. So when you come to God, there is no need for you to come to him and say, God, I want to be right with you. So I'm going to do all these things so that I'm now right with you. Instead, I'd encourage you to just go to God being honest. Go to God and say, you know what? I can't move that weight. You know what? I can't stop this addiction. You know what, God, this habit that I have going on, I've tried to stop and I just can't do it. You know what, God, I've done everything that I can and I'm just tapped out. Go to God honest and see how much he works in your life. See how much more your life changes than when you were trying to do it on your own. Please, for your own sake, stop trying to move the weight. Leave it alone. Let it sit. Okay? Let it sit and let God pick it up. Let God do the work in you that he's promised to do. Count on him to do it. He said he would. I'm not telling you to test God. I'm telling you to hold him accountable to his word. Because I promise you, he will not let that opportunity slip by. The second you drop the weight, I promise you, you will see a difference in your walk with God. Drop the weight. Have a great night. I hope you enjoyed this this little episode. I was not planning on making this a video at all, but I was trying to type it into like a phone screen width that would be readable on Instagram. In one reel, it just wasn't working out. So I'm hoping that this blesses you. I'm hoping the Spirit mentored to you, and I'm praying just for continued movement in your relationship with God. Don't give up yet. I promise you he's got you. All right? Stay tuned to the next one, man. I want to see you in that next video. Peace, all right?